This is all about the song.
Okay, so last podcast that we did, I was in Manila, which is the main city in the Philippines. And it was unbelievable. But it was a city. And since then, we've gone to Cebu for a day. And before that, we went to El Nido, which was a beach town. And that was unbelievably picturesque. And we went to, just the view, the mountain. I guess they're not mountains. Yeah, they're mountains. It was surreal. I've never seen water that was green or turquoise. It was unbelievable. We went on all these boat tours and checked out private islands and stayed on the beach and swam in all these different areas, these lagoons. It was unbelievable. There are places I don't know if I'm alone in this, but there are places that you dream of going in your life, and then there are places that you just are privileged to go to that you had no intention, and this has been it for me. I will say though, I grew up in a Filipino neighborhood in Toronto, so I've always had tons of Filipino friends, and to be here and to experience what their culture is firsthand has just been insane. Right now I'm in Siargao, which has been kind of the we've been leading up to Siargao. It's a surfer town, and right now I'm sitting in a 6-person cottage house. I'm looking out at the water, and there's just waves. I was just at the beach. I went for a swim. There's surfers everywhere. It's just incredible, and I'm still with my friends, Kavi Gupta, Carlo Cruz, Paul Yonia, Mark Mamalidi, and Joanna Stetsowitz. It's been so wonderful to hang out with them, and all these years later, just, it was great. The first couple days, I think we talked about, our adult stuff going on now. And as soon as that was done, we've just reverted back to puns, jokes, affectionately making fun of each other. We've been on a lot of flights since, and we've been traveling together for hours and hours on end. And it's been really wonderful to reconnect with friends that you have and that you care about. I mean, how much do you really see them? Once a month? Once for 2 months? Once a year? Our friend Cavi, he lives in Australia. The internet is so wonderful to be able to continue and keep up with people, but, to go to bed, to wake up with the same people there, it's been really wonderful and really enjoyable. We've talked about every party that we went to in high school, what it was like growing up, how you look back in retrospect and realize, this is how my parents treated me, this is how I was brought up. I understand it now. It's been really cool to have a retrospect of how it was when we grew up and who we were, and it's also been really great just going through all the different parties that we went to, realizing which was our super bad moment, our big party, or our graduation. And it's very weird because a lot's happened since then, and there are people who have gotten married. There are people that, there have been falling outs. There are people that have died. And to recount these really, really influential times with people that you're still close with has been, the scenery's great. But I gotta say, the conversation may even be better. And what's really cool is, as we talk about when we were 15, what we were up to, and we're now 30, this trip and this experience will be that, remember that time when we're 60, And memories are really important. These are 6 people that I grew up playing music with. These are people that I, cut my teeth playing with. They played in various bands and different musical projects. I mean, Joanna, I have a sign in my apartment that says I drove 5 kilometers to see the band I played in, Sadie Mae Crash, play when we played at a public library in the basement in Toronto. And, you look at these people and you realize, like, they've been, supporting you for so many years, and you hope to support them just as much. So much happens in life, and it's really nice to take a moment and step back and to just, reflect. Episode 3 today is, well, it's funny because when I wasn't 15, but I was about 19, and I worked at a drugstore called Main Drug Mart, and I decided not to go to university to pursue music, so obviously I needed to get a job. And one of the things my parents did, which was fantastic, though daunting at the time, was make the decision that if I wasn't going to go to university, I should probably start paying rent. Definitely, I should start paying rent. And so, of course, the first thing I did after school was I got a job. And they totally conned me into becoming a supervisor for a whopping $1 raise. And I went from my 26-hour-a-week situation to working about 60 hours. And on Fridays and Sundays, I worked 12 hours, 9 to 9. And it was tough because, we were going out at night and we were partying. We just turned legal drinking age. And to have the responsibility, you had to do it, but it meant you also had to get up in the morning. So on Sundays, I would wake up. It would be about 8 o'clock in the morning because I only lived a couple blocks away. And I'd turn on Much More Music, which was channel 36. And every morning for about a month, I watched this music video and I fell in love with this band. And they're called the Golden Dogs. The Golden Dogs are a Toronto band, and they're one of my absolute favorites. Their drummer was a gentleman named Taylor Knox. Years later, I got the opportunity at the Sun Crash Music Festival to open up for the Golden Dogs. And of all the shows I've ever played, that whole day and night was magical. We stayed over in the field. It was so cool. And I was so excited to see my favorite band play. And they just destroyed. I always noticed this gangly drummer in the back who played like a mastodon. He was just so great. And I don't know when or how or why. Well, I know why, but I followed him on Facebook and then Instagram. I think the Golden Dogs were posting that Taylor Knox had started a band, and I started following him. And he would post various, projects and stuff like that. And he came out with an EP, and he came out with a full album. And I loved the music, but I also loved the aspect of him being a drummer coming forward. I'm doing the same, being a sideman, a bass player, and starting my own project. And I've looked to Taylor for inspiration on doing it. Now, since interviewing him and having him over, I've learned that, his first start was in playing guitar, and drums were something that he just fell into, which I have to say that's the same thing that happened with me with the bass. Taylor Knox is the first person that I've cold called and just basically said, hey, I don't know you. You don't know me. We played a show together years and years and years ago, and we never met there. But I had this podcast, and the idea is to interview musicians, and most in particular songwriters, about what they're doing. And, I've been following you for so long, and would you do it? He wrote back to me like in 20 minutes. He's like, absolutely. Let's do it this day. I'm so into it. Let's go. And I was really excited. Just it's been really cool to send out emails to people and then respond back and be positive to do it. And it was really amazing waiting for him to come over. Taylor Knox is a very, very tall person, and when I went out to my parking lot just to see this guy with this long blonde hair with cool sunglasses and a guitar in hand coming to my place to talk about music was just a thrill. I really felt glad that I had made the decision to do this. It was very interesting to just start talking and see where the conversation went, and it was really, really great to have the time to get to know him and get to discuss with him all the things I really wanted to ask. His album Love has come out about a couple months ago. It's fantastic, and I really encourage you to listen to it. Taylor also continues to play drums for all sorts of bands, and he is really one of the key members in the Toronto musician circle. He was really fun, and I'd like to thank him. And I look forward to seeing what he does and how he takes his musical passions. So here we are, episode number 3, Taylor Knox. This song is called It Will Always Be This Way.
If you should ever be scared, if you should ever be worried, girl, I'd be there in a hurry. Oh, 'cause you're my world. If you should wonder why the clouds must travel across the sky, I'd come running to dry the tear from your eye. But it's hard to love you so. What if you should ever go? And I long to hear you say, it will always be this way. Baby, it will always be this way. If you should ever decide that you will be taken to the skies, I would follow you anywhere that you could fly. But it's hard to love you so. What if you should ever go? And I long to hear you say, it will always be this way. Baby, it will always be this way. It will always be this way. It will always be this way.
Congratulations on your new album, Love.
Thank you.
Now it's been out for a couple weeks now.
Yeah, it came out on June the 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been out for
So yeah, it's
months.
almost 3 months, I guess. Yeah.
How's it been since it's been out, you've been doing a lot to promote it.
It's been good. It's been really good. Yeah. A lot of great feedback, and I've played a lot of fun shows. And I mean, the biggest one for me is that I like it still, which is like, while you're making a record, you spend the whole time, more time than you should, worrying about whether or not you like what you're doing sometimes.
Right.
But I think that at least that's the case for me, but talking to other people who make music and make records as well, it seems that that's just part of it, and then eventually you just keep working, you know? And eventually you end up with something that you hopefully like.
Does it feel different now from like recording the album to now playing it out? Has it taken on a new life?
I mean, I guess so, because the songs seem like that's how they go. Like, the songs kind of sound like, oh yeah, that's how they go. That's how they've always went. That's how they will go forever, you know?
Right.
Whereas when you're working on it, or when you're still in the recording process, you're thinking like, should I cut that verse, or like, should I add a verse? Is that word stupid, you know? So I don't think those things anymore, because it just doesn't matter what I think or not. I just have to, that's just how it goes now, you know?
Words are interesting because you have to live with them forever.
Yeah.
I listened to it was a while ago, but a Kim Gordon interview where she was saying like, if I can say anything to you, be very careful of the words you use, because you don't know what song you might have to play for 20 years.
That's true.
And every time you're going to go, oh man, I got to sing this lyric. So to go back to the beginning, you were saying to me earlier that you're from Aurora, Ontario.
I grew up in the sweet suburb of Aurora, yeah.
Which is cool. I've been to Aurora before. It's got stuff. Now,
no mall, no movie theater.
Oh, wow.
But the next town over had a mall and a movie theater.
Richmond Hill?
Yeah, that would be one town south, but Newmarket was closer for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could go see a movie. And I think actually Aurora got a movie theater once I moved out.
Right. Yeah. Now, growing up in Aurora, when did you get into music? What was your relationship with it?
I was into music right away. My mom remembers being pregnant with my little brother, so I was about 3. And she had to hide the Beatles records from me because I figured out how to work the turntable by myself.
Wow.
And I would keep putting them on.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which album. It might be the Wings album, London Town, which is a big favorite of mine when I was about 3 or 4. But one of the albums, she says, when I hear that album, I can still feel morning sickness because you would insist on playing it so much while I was pregnant with your brother.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So
I guess pretty early. And then I kind of forgot about music until I was 8 or 9, and I met a friend who was like, well, I like the Beatles, or, you know, the Beatles came up.
Right.
And I was like, well, I used to like the Beatles, like, but now I don't care anymore, you know? And he's like, why don't you care? They're awesome. And he's like, you know, come over to my, you know, I don't know how you invite people over when you're 8 or 9, but well, if you come over and play, what we'll do is we'll just listen to my dad's Beatles CDs.
That's, you know, it's cool. The Beatles are ageless in that sense. Like, and you can always find a friend that's found them through their parents and stuff like that.
I guess so, yeah.
Now, was this your big musical inspiration? Do you have any like contemporary musical passions from then? Like, was there anything that you liked that was like coming out?
No, the first thing I liked that was coming out now was Sloan, because they sound like the Beatles probably. But and maybe Oasis was actually before Sloan.
Okay.
Also sounds exactly like the Beatles.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, I at the time I would say that my interests were pretty narrow, and like it was just things that were Beatlesy.
Right.
And then I guess I really liked Collective Soul. I remember that band when I was about 10.
I remember them.
They have that song that's like do no do no no no.
Yep.
And that's na. I was really into them for some reason.
They were a big band.
I guess so, yeah.
I know. It's funny. I recently saw the Philosopher Kings play at the Mod Club, and I was like, oh my
awesome.
God. Like, it just reopened this whole moment of childhood, like just even sitting in the back of a car. Like, that was a good song, you know?
Yeah.
Now, you started with drums, playing drums. Is it your first instrument?
No, my first instrument was the guitar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started playing guitar when I was about 10.
How did you get your first guitar?
My grandpa bought it for me. I would ask for a guitar for Christmas, and I think my parents probably just thought that was funny because I was like this little kid, you know, what are you going to do with a guitar? It's like bigger than you. And my grandpa, God bless him, went to the music store and he said, I got this grandson who's really little and he wants to play the guitar. So he bought me a baritone ukulele, which is the high 4 strings of a guitar and like the size of I don't know, it's smaller than even a 3/4 size guitar, but much bigger than a ukulele. Like, and he gave that to me, and within a couple days, I was just playing the guitar. Now, my dad played the guitar, so he was able to show me, like, this is a G chord, and this is a C chord.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's cool.
Yeah.
What was, so now you wanted to play guitar, you play baritone, ukulele. How, did it last? Like, did you stick with the instrument?
Yeah, I just played it all the time.
Oh, cool.
I basically haven't stopped since then, you know?
Now, when did you transition from the ukulele to the guitar?
It was a year or two later, I think. I can't remember exactly how long, but eventually I was like, I want to try a real guitar now, you know?
Right. Did you
like,
play in like high school bands?
Yeah, I played. I was pretty much from the time I was like 12 or 13. I was just always in a band with someone.
Right.
At first, it was just I just taught people to play instruments. So that I was like, hey Ian, you're my best friend. Do you want to play the drums? You know? And he's like, I guess so.
That's cool.
And I could barely play the drums, but I had a sense that you go like, dun, 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 you know, like a little bit. I don't know how. I guess I just picked it up from listening to music. And that was my first band, is people I taught to play instruments. And I don't think the bass player ever really learned how to play the bass.
As a bass player, I understand that fully. That's how I became a bass player. I don't know, he's struggling with the guitar. Let's give him a bass. But So you started that. High school, did you grow up with, like, when did the transition happen where you started to play with people that were, as passionate as music as you?
Yeah, sometime around high school, all of a sudden, like, that first band broke up because people do it for a couple of years and they go like, I don't even like music that much, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, can we rehearse every day? We should go play gigs somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know?
It's hard. Also, parents.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, which I thought were hard until girlfriends came into the picture. But so you're playing. What were your first? So were you writing songs from the get-go? Were you guys playing covers?
Yeah. So a little bit. The band was playing a little bit of everything, I guess. Actually, mostly original songs. Yeah, I was always writing songs, and I don't know how. People ask you as you start to do more and more interviews. People ask you how you got the idea or what you got started. I have no idea. I can remember sitting on the bed in my parents' house and just holding the guitar, and next thing I knew, I was singing this song, and I don't know if I was trying to write a song, but I remember thinking like, hey, I think I made that up. Like, I think that's my song.
Cool.
And then thinking, well, I don't know, it kind of sounds like a Chuck Berry song, but then not really thinking anything of it. And then I guess from then on, I realized that I could make up a song if I wanted to, so then I would try to,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's very cool that you found out you could do something and pursued it, opposed to wanting to do something and having to.
I guess so,
figure out
yeah.
how.
And I mean, maybe I'm just forgetting. Maybe I was trying to write a song for weeks, and that was the first one that came out, But I don't remember.
From my experience, if you had a hard time trying to write a song, you usually don't forget that.
I guess so, yeah.
So for me, it was not a natural thing, but that's very cool. Now, so when did you start playing drums then?
I started playing drums when I was about 10, so I'd playing guitar for a year or two. And I figured out, I guess from watching like the Beatles anthology or something, I figured out that overdubbing was a thing.
Right.
So I would ask my dad, like, I don't understand, like, how can you do something at a different time? And he would say, well, it's like when you record, it's like if you're recording on one tape machine, if there was another sound in the room along with with your voice, let's say that sound was like the sound of a band playing.
Right.
And so I went, well, I could just do that with two tape machines. And I figured out that you could play the guitar and then press play on that tape and then play another guitar part along with it and press record on the other tape. And then on that tape, you'd have both of them at once.
Cool.
So that kind of extrapolated into finding out that there was a magical machine called a 4-track tape recorder, which would do this for you, and it was all in one thing,
Nice.
And it didn't go like this when you turn it on and you went from the tape hiss, you know? So, for some reason, I decided that I wanted there to be drums, too, and I didn't know anyone who played the drums, so I don't even know what I would have done. Probably, like, hit, like, a toy drum and a tambourine or something. But, yeah, I just kind of slowly picked up the drums somehow. And then I would be in bands with the good... Eventually, about grade 11 or 12, it was like, hey, well, I should try to be in a band with, like, the really good musicians, Like, these guys are better than me. instead of just teaching my friends to play, I should be like, that'd be awesome. Like this guy can do like drum fills and stuff, you know, and like things that make you go like, wow, that's awesome. So I started playing with the older guys who were really good at music. And then, you know, I'd pick up, be like, can you show me how to do that? And can you show me how to do that? Or, you know,
and
that
just
kind of
learn.
stuff. Yeah.
It's great. Influence is so important. Like not even just like influence like the Beatles, but it's like influenced by that, the kid in the senior jazz band when you're in the junior jazz band. It's,
oh, yeah. And you want to be like them. And you just think like, you're like, how is that guy the best drummer in the world, you know?
Yeah. I had a chance to be friends with the guy that I looked up to playing guitar in high school. He was like the grade 12. And just years later, we were like really good friends and hung out. And I had to tell him all the time, I'm like, the 14-year-old me would not believe this right now.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty fun.
So you started playing in bands. When did you start playing with artists like the Golden Dogs?
Oh, okay. So that's also when I became, when I did a lot of drumming. I moved to Toronto to go to university. I saw the Golden Dogs play at my Frosh Week, actually.
Cool.
And it was amazing. And I remember probably very sheepishly going up to one of them, probably like the bass player, who was only in the band for like a year or two after that, you know? But and saying like, I love your band. He's like, cool, thanks, like whatever, you know? And I'm sure he was very nice to me. And then I just thought nothing of it other than I love this band. And they had pamphlets because it was before the internet. So there's pamphlets on the tables and it said, you know, the Golden Dogs appearing, and this was probably early September if it was Frosh Week, so appearing like October 28th at the Alma Combo. And I just remember sticking the flyer in my pocket and being like, well, I'm obviously going to go to that. Like, the dream of moving to the city and like seeing a good band has happened so quickly, you know? Little did I know I was seeing like the best band, at least what would have been my favorite band in Toronto at that point in time, you know? So I just saw them and I loved them and I went to the other show. And then shortly after that other show, like maybe we're talking November, I got a call from Dave, the lead singer of the Golden Dogs. And he knew someone who had done a session with me 2 or 3 years earlier, which was one of those like, you're the drummer in my band is going to recording school and like we can have free studio time if we're the guinea pigs while all the different people learn how to set up a mic, you know?
I've done that.
Yeah, and then it's like once you sit there for 6 hours watching people mic your guitar amp over and over again, then you get to record for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And so now it seems like such a ridiculous proposition, but at the time you're like, amazing. Like,
it's fantastic.
I'll do anything to have a studio time. Yeah.
18 people waiting on you hand and foot. Just like you watch one guy hold the cord, one guy hold the stand, one guy hold the mic. They all meet in the middle. Bob's
yeah, exactly. They realize they got the wrong ends.
So now how long did you play with Golden Dogs for?
Yeah, sorry, I'm telling a very long version of the story.
No. Admittedly, I'm a Golden Dogs like super fan.
Sweet.
So
yeah. Me too.
And my thing with the band was when I would go to work every morning, the 2 music videos on Big Eye, Little Eye were always playing right before I left for work.
Awesome.
So I watched the videos and those songs were just like ingrained in my head. And then I went to Sonic Boom, bought the CD. And
Wicked.
Like it was just such a similar experience in the sense that it was like, who are these guys? Like it was just so amazing.
Well, they're such a great band and Dave's such an amazing songwriter, you know? So it's just like, I don't know. It's just kind of shocking when I heard the album too after seeing them live. I was like, this is so good. Like,
yeah,
this is so much better than everything I hear on the radio or whatever, you know? Anyway, so I played with, basically he knew a guy who had been at one of these sessions, who was like one of the senior people. And he was trying to frantically find a replacement guitar player. Cool. And I'd play guitar in the session. And this guy said, I know this is a total long shot, but there was this kid who seemed like he was pretty good at the guitar for how young he was. Maybe you should try him, you know? And so that's how I got the call. Hey, this is Dave from the Golden Dogs. And I just thought, no, it couldn't be. Like, I love, and he was like, I don't know, you probably never heard of us. I was like, oh no, I love the Golden Dogs. And he's like, okay, well, this is a different Golden Dogs. Because, like, little did I, you know, at that time, you fresh from the suburbs and, like, 18 or 19, you just assume if there's someone playing a show in Toronto that they're rich and famous and, like, you know, like, who knows what. But, like, so he's just going, like, no, it couldn't be. No, it's got to be a different band. But, like, this is for this band, the Golden Dogs. Like, yeah, I was at your show last week or 2 weeks ago, you know? Wow. And he was like, oh, crazy. How did you hear about us? And, I saw you play and I went to another show. I said, okay, well, I got your number from this guy. And he goes, do you think you could learn like 7 or 8 of our songs in 2 weeks? Because I need a guitar player. And I said, I already know how to play all your songs.
Oh, my god!
And he was like, No, like the Golden Dogs. Like this, our album's called Everything Three Parts. I was like, yeah. I mean, I was like, I don't know. I'd have to like learn specific parts, I guess, but I could already play. I play along to your album every day.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that weird?
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So then I played that fill-in gig, and then their guitar player came back, and then like 6 or 7 months later, it was another one. I think it was a fill-in on bass the next time. It was like, hey, do you play bass? Our bass player can't do a gig, and you did a good job 6 months ago when we asked you, you know? So I did that fill-in on bass, and I think pretty quickly after that, I just started playing bass in the band. Like maybe they needed a permanent bass player or something.
Right.
Anyway, I became the bass player. And then when we were going into the studio to record Big Eye, Little Eye, after like 6 months of me playing bass, the drummer was going to move to England to do a master's degree in percussion, I think.
Wow.
But it was like a real last minute thing. So he was just, it was like we were supposed to go into the studio in like 3 weeks. And we had a couple of shows where we were going to play the songs to just kind of work them out before the studio. And he was like, I can't do the studio. And, you know, it wasn't anything up to me. It was just kind of Dave and Jess going like, well, what are we going to do? And then somehow we came up with a solution of, I said, well, you know, I played the drums a little bit. And like, I used to always love playing when the bass player in my high school band smoked cigarettes, and he'd go have a smoke break, and me and the drummer would switch, and we'd play Ramones songs or Green Day songs or whatever a guy who couldn't really play guitar but loved punk music could play, you know? And so I was like, I play the drums a little bit. Like, maybe I should just play the drums for the shows, because that way we don't have to get someone ready to play a gig. And I was like, even if I'm not very good, I know when the songs start, when they end, when the chorus comes. And bass player, like nobody notices the bass, right? Like you could stick anyone on the bass. I mean, bass is my favorite instrument.
Yeah, I know.
It's a fact of life that you could basically not have a bass player. I mean, look at Bahamas. For the whole first 5 years of Bahamas, he didn't have a bass player.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, he has like some pretty amazing multi-instrumentalists in the band.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah,
he's got a bass player now, but he did years with no bass player. So I guess that proves you don't really need a bass player, you know?
I know.
Which makes me sad because I like the bass.
Me too.
Anyway, I end up playing the drums, and then we do Big Eye, Little Eye, and it's okay because there's a click track, and I can do a few takes of the song, kind of figure it out. But it turned out I think I was even a little better at the drums than I suspected, but still wasn't that good. I was just like, okay, you know? I could like play songs, and it sounded good, you know? And then we went on tour did a whole bunch of shows in the next year or two, and I would just play the drums every day, so I got a lot better at them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I saw you guys play at the Sun Crash Music Festival, which
Oh,
is
right
like
on.
in the middle of nowhere, and I played way earlier in that day.
Oh, cool. What band
And
were you playing there?
I played in a band called the Ruby Spirit at the time.
Okay.
We played early, and then we met Spiral Beach that night, which I went on right before you guys. And so we were having this date, and like in my mind, like it was, I don't know if you remember the festival, but it was great. It was so cool.
So good.
And in my head, like we played so early, and we had the whole day, and we had like our campsite, and we met these friends. We got on all these walks, and in the back of my head, I was like, Golden Dogs, like 10:45. I knew, like it was like, I was so excited. And there's always that nervousness that you have when you like really want to see a band you've never seen live, but you know all their songs. And it was just like, it was just awesome. It was such a great show, and it was cool, and like the colors, like the aesthetic of the band, like you had like the circles with like the green circle inside with the red circle.
That's
and
true.
The
There used to be a
yellow.
lot of colors, didn't there?
And it was awesome. It was amazing, and it just didn't let me down. And that's just the best feeling in the world.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because it's like there's like two notches. There's pass and then meet and exceed, and it was just like it was just one of those nights I'll never forget. And you know, I woke up later in the field and found a hot dog, and we went home that next. Like it was great. So,
awesome.
But
those are really fun festivals.
It was cool. So now after, have you played with other bands? Playing session work, or
yes, played with a lot of bands.
As much now, is that more like one-offs? Is it more like do you had at that period of time were you joining bands, or you're just taking things as they came?
Yeah, I mean it was very much taking things as they came. I just wanted to be a musician, and I didn't really think about what that meant or how to do that or anything. Mm-hmm. It would just basically be like, I had a band with my friend Dave, where we wrote songs together. So that was kind of what I was doing when I met the Golden Dogs, but then playing with them, I was like, well, yeah, of course I'll play in my favorite band, you know? And I feel like maybe at that time there was a sense of like It's funny, I haven't thought of this in years, but I bet you at the time it was like, oh, should I do this? Am I betraying my band by playing with another band? You know how
Right.
people get funny in their early 20s about stuff like that?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure that there was all sorts of turmoil and decisions to make, but I mean, it never seemed hard to me. It just seemed like, yeah, I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. And then over the years, I played with all sorts of people, but it's usually just people ask me and I go like, hey, that'd be fun, you know?
Yeah.
And I ended up playing with Hayden for 4 or 5 years there.
Oh,
Just because he
wow.
was like, hey, do you want to play? Like, I think he asked me to play on a record first. I'm making a record and like I want the drums, and someone said they knew you and you were good. So I went over to his house and played some drums, and then it's kind of like I'm putting together a band for this year of promoting my record, you know? So I did that, and that was really fun, and I just kept doing shows with him. And I've done all sorts of stuff, really.
That's
Yeah, but it's never been, it was never like a plan or like something I was trying to do. It's just people go like, hey, do you want to come do this? I'm like, yeah, I love music. I love playing music, you know, let's do it.
That's great. It's always fun when your musical path can just happen.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's really fun. It's nice to just do things with the intention of a good story, and if you can pay rent at the end of the day, it's like that's a bonus. So
Yeah, for sure.
now, while you're playing with all these bands and stuff like that, you were mentioning how you were also writing songs and stuff like that. Was there an idea ever to want to do the project that you're working on now, like your own solo
For
project?
sure. I mean, it never would have been solo. I always imagined it being a band,
Right.
but I was always trying to have my own band, you know?
Right.
It's just that all of a sudden the Golden Eyes say, hey, do you want to come play some shows? And then you do that for 2 years and you go like, oh, okay, and we should get back with the band, and someone else calls and you do that. And eventually I did get to a point where I realized that, oh yeah, like I've been doing this for a long time now. If I don't just like really decide I'm going to do something, it could just go on forever. You know, I just keep
Right.
playing music and having a great time. But like, did I ever want to put out my own songs?
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got to that point, the band I had been in that was kind of, I was one of the songwriters in, had broken up. So it was just kind of me being like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's try and make a record here. Excuse me. So it all happened very serendipitously, where my friends in the band called Zeus have a studio in the East End, and they have an apartment above it that's kind of like tied to the garage studio. So they
Okay.
need to have a friend living there.
Right.
And also to me, what I heard was like, hey, do you want to live above the studio and you can use it? And I was like, yep. So that's where I made my first, I was like, you know, it's time to make a record because this could go on forever. And that's where I made what ended up becoming the EP called Lines, which came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So I started that probably like 5 or 6 years ago now. And I just started recording all the songs I had, you know, and I kind of did them. Sometimes I would have friends come and play. Sometimes I'd do stuff on my own. And eventually I had like enough songs where I was like, oh, this could be a cool album, you know?
So there's 6 songs on the EP.
Yeah.
It's very rock and roll. It's very, in comparison to Love, which you just released. You were saying how there were a bunch of people. Was there like an overall theme that you had with it, or was it kind of just like I'm making music?
No, it was more just
together?
making music and recording the songs. I recorded a lot of songs, and one of the songs I did record was this like 20-minute kind of like song suite, like the B-side of Abbey Road, where it's like, I think it's maybe 7 or 8 different songs, and they'll kind of go into each other. And that was going to be the side B. But then people who do music business stuff said that it's this day and age, it's best to start with an EP instead of a full-length album.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. And I feel like a younger me would have been like, this is my artistic statement. I don't want the man telling me what to do. But I think I'd been around enough bands and seen enough people to realize that, like, oh yeah, this person isn't trying to ruin my artistic vision. They're just offering what they've observed, you know?
They might have really good intentions.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mention it, because when I was recording my album, I referred to it as an album, and I had a friend of mine who's a manager pull me aside one day, and he's like, "You're not releasing this all at once, are you?" No. He's like, "Okay, he's like, just don't. Just trust me. Just don't. Take it slow." And it's really true. So you put the album together. Did you when you started playing it, did you have a band that you had found?
I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and put together a band. I'm going to make recordings. I'm going to start playing live. So I found this wonderful guy named Aaron Harvey, who's been playing bass with me actually since my very first gig.
Cool.
When I was like, it's Taylor Knox, and I always assumed I'd think of a band name, and then next thing I know, I got a record out, so it's too late, you know?
That's cool. You have a good name though. So
yeah, that's okay. I mean, funnily enough, someone advised me once, a booking agent, a really nice guy named Eli Klein, said, you should think about changing your name because people are going to, when they hear Taylor, they just think of Taylor Swift. And I said, I mean, I guess you're not wrong, but like, that's a bit of a stretch. I give people more credit than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said, I mean, I'm just giving you advice. Like, you take it or leave it. But if I were you, I'd try and think of a band name.
No, Taylor Knox sounds like a good name.
But it's funny. I was like, you're crazy. No one's that stupid, And it turns out, of course, it has nothing to do with stupidity. It's just how human brains work. And I've had 3 or 4 people to me over the years say, oh, yeah, when they said they were going to put Taylor Knox on this bill, I was like, oh, great, not another country band. And I would say to them, because it's too much of a coincidence, I was like, why did you think I was a country band? And they said, I don't know, Taylor Knox. It just sounds like a country band. And I would say, do you think it has anything to do with Taylor Swift? And, of course, they would go, no. Well, I mean, I guess maybe,
Interesting.
Yeah. I like that story a lot.
It's funny because, I mean, there are a lot of artists that take non-aesthetically pleasing names and kind of change them up for their
true.
Stage name. Elton John or and on the opposite level, I have a friend of mine and he's a DJ and his name's Carlo Cruz, and everyone asks me like, well, what's his real name? I'm like, no, that's it. Like, he's just got one of those great names.
That's
like,
so good.
And it's funny because sometimes you just get lucky. But
yeah.
So you release your EP. Do you tour the album? How did it go? How did you feel?
Yeah, so I just started playing shows anywhere I could. I just started like trying to get out of town a little bit, like going to Hamilton, going to Montreal, just going wherever, can we come and play there? You just send a bunch of emails and eventually someone says yes and you go.
Yeah.
So and then I had what I thought was a finished album. But I thought, I really want to just play some shows around Toronto. And, we'd play everywhere. We played at the Dakota. We did a residency. We did a residency at the Piston. We would play at the Cameron House a bunch, played a few shows at the Horseshoe. And eventually I was playing at the Drake, opening for my friend's band. And, it didn't feel like a particularly different show. We just played a show, and it felt pretty good. The band we'd done a few shows by then, so it wasn't terrifying anymore. I was like, oh, cool, this is fun. We sound good sometimes. And someone came up to me, and this guy, Andrew, who's a dear friend of mine now, and my manager, actually, and just said, I work for this record company called Maple Music, and I really like your album. I'd be interested in hearing what you have. Not my album, but I really like your band.
Yeah.
And I heard a song on MySpace or whatever. I guess MySpace was dead by then, but maybe Bandcamp?
Yeah. I miss MySpace.
MySpace was fun.
It was just so perfectly put together for a musician.
It's true, yeah.
It was just so great.
It's like it's your one page. It's like a one page.
Yeah, I had the but it was just like the perfect setup. And it's funny because I now look at websites and everyone's like, how do you want to lay your website out? And it's like kind of like a MySpace account.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Actually, it is. And just have like top 8 friends, all links and stuff. But
Tom?
I can't tell you how many. Yeah, I know that. But I can't tell you how many bands like I would find out about, even just in Toronto from. You'd see a band like the Miles play, and then you'd go and there'd be like top 8, and you'd just look at it. And you'd
click on the other bands, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, and I felt like it developed like MySpace on a location setting, created so many musical scenes based on your top 8 or your top 16.
Interesting, yeah. Oh, and you could pick which ones are on display.
Yeah, so it's like if you're all of a sudden like a buzz band. It's like, it's kind of a badge of honor to be like part of their top 8. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I saw this band on the front cover of Now magazine.
Oh my God, that's
and now
so
I
good.
see you guys because you're their like second friend on there. And it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an interesting thing. But sorry.
For
anyways.
sure. And I remember that feeling of like trying to build your collection of friends so that you could have a sweet top 8, So it's not just like your friend Steve or whatever is one of your friends, but it's like a band that people have heard of if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember finding out a band I now play in called Jumple. They were called Pavlov's Dog Orchestra.
Oh yeah, I remember
this
hearing that.
Crazy experimental band, and like now it's funny. Now we playing like spandex outfits, and it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were like so progressive with like 5 keyboards and like all this stuff, and it's like I would never found out about this band had it not been for MySpace.
And now you're in the band.
Now I'm in the band, yeah.
MySpace.
That's a whole different thing. Thank you, MySpace.
This podcast is brought to you by MySpace. I think it still exists, actually.
I hope so. I'm going to sign up. So now, okay, so you're at the Drake, you meet a manager, which is...
Yeah, he actually wasn't a manager at the time.
Sorry.
He
Okay.
just worked at a record label, and he
Right.
still does, actually. He has since become my manager because he's awesome and he knows how to get things done in a way that I don't, you know?
How do you like that experience of working with somebody who's looking at the big picture?
It's amazing to have Andrew because he's just, you know, he's just kind of catching the things that I'm not very good at thinking about because I'm thinking about my songs, you know?
Yeah.
Or being like, you have to book your flights. The trip is a month away. I'm like, oh yeah, good idea, you know?
No, it's,
Like, and I've been thinking about booking the flights, but then I was like, oh, what if the bridge went twice as long in this other part, you know?
yeah, and then there's your day.
Yeah, exactly.
Exhausted.
And so that's been great. I mean, I'm sure it can be bad I've heard a lot of people have horror stories about working. Don't ever work with someone. They don't care about it, you know?
I have a
But
horror
I'm
story.
really lucky that Andrew's awesome.
That's very cool.
So yeah, it was basically just like, let's hear what you got. And so I think I said to him 3 or 4 songs, and what else do you got? He's like, I got a whole album. And he's like, okay, cool. Here's the thing. Start with an EP.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I don't want to, but you're taking the time to say that you want to help, so like I'll try and meet you halfway.
Wow.
And do an EP. And it turns out when you look back on it, it was so smart because just a full-length album from someone that nobody's ever heard of, you know?
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, it's just a lot of information, and people are less likely to, you know, people like, I'm the same way. If someone says, like, here's an album, you're thinking, oh, I'll listen to that later. But if there's just like a song, you're like, oh, I'll listen to a song, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult sometimes to absorb like an entire palette of somebody.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I don't even know what this person looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's it like being a front man? Sorry, I meant to ask that earlier.
Oh,
Just because you've played on all positions, let's say.
yeah, it's just a different, you got to have some different considerations. Like for singing, you know, it's important to get a good night's sleep before a show. Whereas when I was playing the drums or the bass, I couldn't care. Like I could play a show. I wouldn't even have to go to bed the night before. I could play a show just fine. You know,
Yeah.
maybe I'd be tired after, but singing, it's like, oh, you got to think about that stuff a little bit more. But now that I'm in the routine of it, it just seems like kind of the same. I'm sure it was more nerve-wracking at first because you're just kind of standing there and everyone's looking at you. And then if you don't sing for some reason, everyone goes like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But I guess it's the same. I remember thinking it was the same with the drums. Sometimes you realized when you're playing the drums on stage, you're like, you know, if I just stopped playing, that would totally change the vibe right now. You know, especially like a really loud part.
Yep.
Where the drums are banging away. If all of a sudden you just like stopped.
No, it's
Yeah.
true. That was the one really weird thing I learned about music is it's so cool to play, like sing or play the guitar, but it's like when you're part of the rhythm section, it's like, oh, you just can't stop. Like your role is to never stop. Ever.
Sure. Or that is a good point of when people really do notice the bass. If the bass is
if
going
the bass
along and the bass
stops?
just stops.
Yeah.
And then it comes back in. That can really change how the whole mood feels, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very vindictive move in rehearsals. I'm like, what doesn't sound right? You're just turning your volume down.
Because I hate you.
Okay, guitar players, let's turn down, please. So basically at this point in time, like you've got your EP out, you're playing shows, you've met someone who believes in you, and now your EP's out, you're touring. Now you're gonna do your full length.
Now what?
basically.
Yeah. Now you get to make a record.
Since you've already put out an album, I know it's an EP, but
Yeah, it felt
it's
like a
your-
real album. Like it was the whole thing.
Absolutely,
You know, we
yeah.
played shows everywhere, and
so now you're gonna do your second one. Do you
Yeah.
have like songs stored up, or is this a clean slate?
yeah, I had a lot of songs. I'm always writing songs, and I've pretty much. I mean, you know, I won't write a song for a month or two here or there, just because life or whatever. You don't really feel it. But I've pretty much been writing songs since I was 10, so I got songs everywhere. And now,
Right.
obviously, the first 100 were terrible, but
Yep.
they start getting okay at a certain point, and then after that, it's just kind of like there's a bunch. And, you know, I still write many more songs than I use because some of them aren't as good as others, and it's just
Yeah.
how it ends up, you know? But so, yeah, for the album, I mean, I was continually writing songs and then still had some leftover ones that never got recorded for the Lines EP, but for the most part, there's only one or two that were probably from before lines came out that ended up on Love, if there are that many. Just because, I don't know, you just get excited about... One thing that I did notice was playing a bunch of gigs. I actually wrote the first song on the record, Wishing Well.
Yep.
I came home from a gig in Hamilton, and I was sitting in my apartment, and I thought, I had fun playing that show, but I just wish there was a song that went like... that we just walked out on stage and went like, da-na-na-na-na-na. Like, I just want to have that feeling, and none of my songs do that. Like, a couple of my songs kind of rock, but it's kind of like slow rock.
Yep.
Like, it's very like the song Fire is like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. And so I was like, it's fun to play that one and it rocks, but I want something that like rocks and it's like really fun, So that actually was how the impetus of writing Wishing Well. Like, I didn't write it all that night, but I sang a pretty good demo into my phone of like the kind of melody of the verse and a couple of lines here and there. That's maybe the first time I'd ever done that, where I was just like, I want a song like this. Yeah. So that's a really real consequence of like going out there and playing shows,
Yeah. And you only experience that when you're up there and you're putting together your set of songs.
And it's like, that's what was missing. But I mean, I've certainly tried to write songs before of a certain kind, and it's often been terrible. Like, it's never really worked before.
Yeah.
But, so I try to not do that often. I try and just like kind of have an idea and then work on that, Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I guess most of the songs were pretty new.
Yeah, so the album's called Love.
Yes, it is.
What role does love play in songwriting for you?
I tried very, very specifically to not write love songs for about 3 or 4 years. I thought that it was... everyone had been doing it forever, and I thought that it was just boring and like, why the world doesn't need another love song, I was basically taking the stance of the essay that Paul McCartney lays out in Silly Love Songs, but then having a different conclusion. His conclusion is, let's just do another one and make fun of it. I was like, no, let's just stop. Let's try. I want to do something like original, and like I want to do something that's like creative, And then I think eventually I realized that there's nothing original, that all anyone ever does is just recycle bits of other people's ideas, and then it maybe sounds a little interesting because it's them,
Yep.
And I thought, well, if nothing I do is original anyway, why not just do whatever? And of course, when do you feel things the most strongly is like when you're in love, basically, right? Or like when you're really scared or really sad or really happy, right?
Yep.
And, love or attraction to other humans is a pretty powerful emotion. So you end up writing songs about it. And then eventually I stopped censoring myself and, wrote a few love songs. And then I didn't necessarily mean to make a record called Love. I just noticed that some of the best songs, 3 or 4 of them had the word love in it. So when I saw it in a list, I thought, I better change some of these titles. And then I thought, or I could just roll with it and be like, let's just... And then I was like, I started feeling really good about it. I was like, yeah, it's like the world needs positivity so badly. Like, there's so much negativity all the time. And why not just like, I'm putting love out into the world. Like, that's a pretty good thing to do, I feel good about that.
No, totally. With this album, did you record it the same way that you recorded your EP?
No, I did it much more like, I'm going to make an album now.
Okay.
And so I called up my friend Afie, who's Bahamas, and I said, hey, Afie, could you help me make an album? And he was like, yeah, okay. So he helped with the first kind of week or 2 of sessions, and he was going to try to do more, but then he got really busy doing his own shows. So we kind of at a certain point in the process when we were sending demos back and forth, he said, let's do a couple songs together. I'll help you get the ball rolling and like kind of talk through how I think about this and like why I'm doing this. And then, you can do the rest however you do it. But he was awesome. And we we recorded 3 songs together and 2 of them ended up on the record. And
cool.
That was really fun. And so then I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And I really liked, someone had hired me to play the drums on their record, and it was recorded at Candle Studio. I don't know actually how they brand it, but Candle.
Yeah.
And it's like on Sterling Road, so like kind of Bloor and Dundas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
the coolest street in Toronto.
Yeah, soon to be a very expensive street, it looks like. There's a bunch of condos going up around there. So I had been in there and I just thought, hey, that place looks cool. I want to record there. And so I just kind of, got a contact of the person who runs it, and I talked to this guy, Josh. I thought, hey, I like this guy. And then I found out that he'd worked on some stuff. Like he'd worked on the Dilly Dally record. He'd worked on the Weaves record. And I was like, oh, he's done amazing stuff,
Yeah.
And I listened, of course, he's scoping people out. I listened to his band. I was like, oh, I like his band. He's got a band called Beliefs. So I thought, yeah, I'll try doing a song or two with this guy. And then I just finished the record with him because I liked it so much, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you, when you went into the studio to do it, did you do like all the drums for the album, all the bass for the album, or was it song by song?
It was a little bit in between.
Okay.
So with the AFI stuff, we did a week, and we kind of did the drums the first day or two. We did all the songs on drums before we added anything because they were all set up. And then I kind of liked that pace of the efficiency of keeping the setup and working on stuff, but then only having a couple songs at a time. Because I feel like when it starts to be more, you're just ending up. It's almost like it feels too much like an assembly line. You're just kind of like, okay, let's slap this guitar tone on everything and see if we use it,
Right.
And I like a bit of the sense of kind of a bit of discovery along the way, So I ended up kind of, not really on purpose, it all just kind of happens like what makes sense, And then I was going to do 3 or 4 days with Josh at his studio. So we kind of did 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
And we did the drums the first day, and then we kind of did some stuff, and then we'd do other stuff. And then after that was done, I was like, well, can I do 3 more days? Like, I'm going to do 3 or 4 more songs, And then eventually there was just 15 or 16, and I went, hey, I guess I'm done,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How long of a time period did this transpire over?
That's a good question. It was the very first sessions were late April or early May, I would say. And then the last bit of recording I did was just right around Labor Day. So I guess 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was kind of going in 3 or 4 days at a time, and then like a week or two would go by and I'd do some more.
How do you feel about through the process listening to music and mixes, and do you need time to absorb it, or are you pretty good with just like hearing how it changes with a new mix and being like, I hear it, I'm not going to act emotionally, this is how or are you more like...
It's funny. I feel like I need time, but I think the more that I do stuff, the more I realize that you don't really need time. Right away. You're just scared of being done almost,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like I can kind of tell now. I can kind of hear the inner part of my brain being like, the tamborine's too loud. And ignore the outer part of my brain that goes like, maybe all of your songs are terrible and no one... You know what I mean? Maybe you should just give up now while you're ahead.
It's an interesting state. It's addictive to be in that state too. It's hard to let it go when you're done. To be like, I guess we're finished now.
For sure, yeah.
To enter the new realm.
Yeah, I mean, I find that gets the most extreme with mastering. Yeah. I find people joke about it with other musicians, but it's like, yeah, you can't even tell if you hate your album or if it just sounds perfect the way it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, it almost feels like you're scared of making a mistake more than any actual sonic worries, is often what I feel holds people up, including myself in the past. So I think I'm getting better at making decisions faster.
That's cool.
But a little bit in between, a little bit of both.
I mean, it is like, that's the thing about songs is it's interesting because no matter how you look at it, even if it's like the most black and white scenario, you're like, well, this is my feelings, like, on canvas.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's always going to be an emotional response to it, even,
for sure.
Every decision.
And fortunately, I was pretty good at keeping that as a conscious thought out of my brain.
Right.
Because then when I actually listened to it, it was all done, I was like, oh man, like, I can't believe that I said that, Like, not that there's anything that I don't believe, but it just... just certain lines that feel very personal to me or like very Sherry to me. Mm-hmm. And I probably wouldn't even read that way to anyone else necessarily, but it's just like...
Sherry is like Cher the artist?
No, but as in like sharing.
Just checking. That's cool. Did you, so when you were done, did you go to your mastering session?
No, I did not go to my mastering session.
Oh, okay. Good for you. I was just curious because you were talking about mastering. Did you have it mastered here? Or?
Actually, I did go for the first half an hour because it was just up the street and I wanted to see the guy's studio.
Cool.
But I realized that there was no point in me being there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be going like, hey, are you trying this? Are you trying that? I mastered it with this guy, Gavin Gardner, who's got a band called The Wooden Sky.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he's awesome. And his years, like he was just kind of, we were doing this thing where we were running one song through each of his 4 different tape machines.
Right.
Excuse me, to see which one we liked the sound of the best.
Wow.
And I was like, I love this guy, you know?
Yeah.
And we were listening to them back, and he was like A-Bing these 2 different tape machines, and he was like, this one's got a little more high-end kind of clarity, and this one, and I was like, okay, like I can't hear the difference anymore, so I'm going to go, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, you know?
It's so surreal, the
Yeah.
way that a mastering engineer listens to something.
For sure.
I went to a session, which I probably will be the first and last time I do. It was so weird to listen to a song, like they start working with a song and they mold it and meld it, and they're just playing with like 4 knobs, really.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they take everything off and and you hear where they started to where it is,
Yeah.
and it's the world of a difference.
For sure,
It's
yeah.
almost like how did you do that, or what were you hearing? And it was very. I think it's a cool process for 15 minutes. And then,
Yeah.
then you got to get out of
I
there.
feel like that was the right way to do it. Get to hang out with Gavin, look at his cool tape machines.
See the studio, because studios are awesome.
Yeah, studios are the best. Who doesn't like to hang out in a studio?
Absolutely.
And then get out of there, let them do their work. And then my friend Paul, a really dear friend of mine who actually produced the Golden Dogs album, Big Eye, Little Eye, that's how I met him. He said to me one time, and I was like, Paul, I don't know what to do, you know? I hear these masters, I can't tell, are they terrible? This was years back, before anything that anyone was even going to hear.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're terrible, if I should get my money back, or if it's like amazing, you know? And he said, okay, here's the rule about mastering. You're allowed to ask for a revision, ask for whatever you want. You want more bass, you want less bass, who cares? You know, ask for what you want. You want them more compressed, you want them less compressed, you're allowed that revision, and then you're allowed a second revision once you hear the difference, and then you're not allowed any more revisions. If the person is a professional, that means that they're doing a good job and you're just insane.
Yeah.
And of course, you might like it a little differently than them, but in 2 revisions, you're just going to go on forever and no one's going to notice a difference, including yourself in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't know. Okay, that's pretty good advice. And now that I think back on that advice, anytime I master something later, I'm just like, that is such good advice because, you know, you could go on forever being like, what if it was just a little more bassy, you know? And then, okay, that's too bassy. What if it's in between?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
you
forever
know, you've been
process.
there, yeah.
I unfortunately I learned that myself. Somebody didn't tell me. I had to find out and pay the money for it. But I will never forget. Now, on the album Love, what's your favorite song?
My favorite song on Love is Castles, the last song.
How come?
I don't know. I just
just
like
like
it the
it?
best. Yeah.
That's cool.
I think it's because when I recorded it, I had just written it like a week or 2 before.
Right.
So I didn't even know if it was a song yet. I just knew that it was the last day that the drums are going to be set up. And I just kind of said, before we go for lunch, can I just run 1 or 2 takes of the song? I almost just thought I almost in my head was thinking like, I just want to kind of lay it down quick, almost like a demo. I don't really like making demos, but I was basically just demoing it to see if I even, you know, does it need a bridge? Like,
Yeah.
it just kind of, I don't know. I guess one thing that I've learned is to trust those kind of instincts. And I remember, and I just thought, like, I just really want to record this song, you know? And I did the drum track, and then I did the guitar on it, and then I did a keyboard. Josh suggested a keyboard. He was always really good at that, you know? He's like, what else do you hear on this? I was like, I have no idea. Bass? A lead vocal? And he's like, I could hear like an organ sound. So he dialed up a cool tremie organ, and we put that on. And then by like the end of the night, I just kind of put a vocal on it, and I was so pleasantly surprised to realize that not only was it an actual song, but it kind of I liked it, you know?
Right.
And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, that went from didn't exist to like a contender for the album, you know,
Yeah.
pretty quickly. So I think that's probably why like people always like their latest thing, you know?
Yeah, because you're in love with it.
Yeah.
You know?
was the freshest
it's a
one.
magic feeling
Yeah.
of being in love with a song, and the world, like the sky just seems bluer. For some reason, when you've written a song that like you love and you think it's going to work too.
Yeah. And I just love that. I don't know. I'm a sucker for that really slow kind of behind the beat. You know, it's kind of the same as with most Neil Young songs that just
Yeah.
like, da-na-na, the thing just makes your head go like this, you know? I love that. That's my favorite. So that's probably part of it too.
Very cool.
I like that song. Yeah.
Now, the last thing I have to ask you about, unless is there anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. No.
I saw that you filled in on drums for Sloan.
Yes, I did.
How was that?
That was super fun. That was, so we did some shows as the Golden Dogs. We did some shows when I was playing drums with them, opening for Sloan. Like, I think we did a few different tours. I remember being in LA opening for them. I remember being in the East Coast. I remember being in Cleveland. So it couldn't have all been one tour. Anyway, we got to know them, and they're awesome. And I spent the first, I mean, I still do it sometimes, but like you said, being like, if only I could tell myself at 13 that I was going to be like talking to you guys, you know, playing a show with you even just talking would have been cool.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure, whatever, you know? I mean, I'm sure they're very appreciative at first, but I said it so many times, I'm sure it got to be annoying. Anyway, got to be friends with them, and I especially got to be pretty good friends with Andrew. So he actually played drums on a couple of the songs on Lines. He's been very sweet to me about, like, he played some shows with me in the early days, playing drums for me. And
he's a monster drummer.
Yeah, he's the best. So, that's awesome, and I'm so grateful, you know? And so because we were friends, it was like, the first time it happened was Chris had broken his collarbone, so he couldn't play the drums, like he just couldn't, but they had a gig at the Molson Amphitheater. I think it was some sort of like V-Fest or something, some festival.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, oh, hey, Chris broke his collarbone, so he can't play the drums, but we're still going to do the show because he can still play bass.
Right.
Can you come and play the drums for Andrew's songs?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that was really fun. And then I think it was from that Andrew said, well, now you've played my songs. Like, I owe you one. You know, I got to play your songs. And I went like, okay.
Wow.
And he was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm sure, I don't know if how much he meant it as like commitment. I mean, he's done it so many times. I'm very appreciative. But I was just like, that would be amazing, you know? And it is amazing. So that was pretty cool. And then eventually, years later, it was like, I think Andrew had injured himself. I think he'd had a broken rib from playing hockey. That's what it was. He got like something in the rib and broke a rib. And so they were committed to doing 2 sets, and he had done a gig the week before, and he could barely make it through. He was like, I thought it would be okay, but as soon as I started drumming, it really hurt. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't know if I can make it through 2 sets. Can you come out and just be ready to play? And so how it ended up going down was that they were doing the one chord to another tour at the time.
Yep.
So he did one chord to another, and then I played kind of like the 10 or 11 songs they played in the second set,
right,
which was really fun because he was in a lot of pain with his rib.
Wow.
So that was cool. That was super fun. I mean, I love those songs from a time when I thought the people who were musicians were basically magicians, because my songs were not nearly that good, you know, and they didn't sound good, and I couldn't play instruments well. So just anyone doing anything was incredible. Like, even like the kids band that came to play at school, you know, is like, wow, they're a real band, you know? So like, let alone a band like Sloan, who have amazing songs and they play them so tastefully and everything's so well arranged. Yeah, I love those songs from a time when, and you know, now that I make songs, it's like, oh, that's a cool song, you know, like you hear something and you're like, oh yeah, the new Mac DeMarco, it's a really good song, you know, but it's not like, how on earth does he do that, you know?
Well, I think it's nice that you remember that there is a magical element to it, because once you start to look at the nuts and bolts, sometimes you can get so lost in the detail.
For sure, yeah.
You kind of forget.
Oh yeah, you could go on forever on 10 kilohertz, you know?
Yeah.
Is it 10 or is it 11?
Yeah, and it's even the conversations about it after a while, you're like, guys, this song's about me breaking up with a girl. Like, you know, who cares what microphone's on the kick drum? But yeah, sometimes it is cool to talk about it.
Yeah,
so.
It's nice to have a good mic on the kick drum.
Oh.
Yeah, so I still, even though I'm friends with them and I've played with them a couple times before, it's still, you know, I think a couple times during the set, I think, oh my God, this is insane. Like, imagine I could explain to myself.
Yeah.
Like, you know that those magicians that you don't understand how they conjure up these magical landscapes? You can hang out with them and play their music with them, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah, it still kind of feels, in a way, it kind of feels like it couldn't possibly have happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though, like, I remember being there and I remember having a great time.
Surreal.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where can I run? Looking for harmony, running into love. You are my everything. With you, it's always summer. Running into love. You are my everything. I can't explain a lot about all that I've got. I don't believe the news or believe in truth. When there's nothing left to lose, and we all choose. Where can I run? Looking for harmony, running into love. You are my everything. With you, it's always summer. Running into love. You are my everything. I don't have the right to leave this another night. All that I have said, there's nothing that's in my head. When there's nothing left to say, you won't run away. Where can I run? Looking for harmony, running into love. You are my everything. With you, it's always summer. With you, it's always summer. With you, it's always summertime. Running into love. You are my everything. You are my everything.
Taylor Knox, Running Into Love. I'd like to thank Taylor for coming over to my apartment and playing. It was a real thrill, and to watch him perform these songs was amazing. Taylor's album Love is available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you download music. It's there. Also, I even further recommend you to go check him out live and pick up a physical copy. Recently, Taylor has played at the Reeperbahn Music Festival, and he's been in LA, where he performed and was co-writing songs. I really look forward to seeing what he does next, and I'm going to continue to support him and watch his career grow. It was an excellent conversation. I really hope you enjoyed it as well. So without further ado, since I'm in Siargao and looking at a beach and watching these waves go by, I think I might give surfing a little try. If I don't, I'm looking for a guitar. I gotta find something to play. I just need, it's just beautiful. Maybe like a ukulele. Who knows? I'll find something somewhere. So I'll leave you with that. Episode number 3. Thank you so much for continually listening. And if this is the first time, please check out episode 1 with Alex Pulik from the Nursery and episode 2 with Luke Rose from Ivory Hours. And with that, for Taylor Knox, this is Michael McDonnell saying, thank you so much. The song we're playing you out with today is Castles.
And in the dark, I know it's true. What can we ever know? I know exactly what to do. We've gotta let it show, 'cause there are castles we built out of sand. You can't understand what that's leading to. We are laughing, we are feeling new every day, every day. And in the dark, I see a light, planting a garden, watch it grow. If we're just passing in the night, we better take it slow, 'cause there are castles we built out of sand, and you can't understand what that's leading to.